In the quiet suburbs of São Paulo, long before the roaring engines and champagne sprays, there was a small boy with a dream. His name was Felipe. He was not unlike any other boy in his neighborhood. He had a bicycle with worn-out tires, a dog named Chico who barked at everything, and a smile that could melt away the thickest Brazilian summer heat. But there was something different about Felipe, something deep in his eyes, like an engine, quietly warming up, waiting to be unleashed. Every evening, when the streets grew calm and the sun dipped behind the pastel-colored rooftops, Felipe would sit cross-legged on the cracked pavement outside his home, listening, not to the chatter of neighbors or the hum of insects, but to something more magical, the faint echo of racing engines coming from the small television in the living room. His father, Luis Antonio, was a car mechanic, grease-stained hands, a worn-out cap, and a heart that understood what it meant to fall in love with machines. He noticed the way his son watched the races, not blinking, barely breathing. Felipe didn't just watch the drivers, he felt them. He flinched with every sharp corner, grinned with every overtake, and sat completely still during pit stops, as if silence would help the crew work faster. One night, as rain tapped gently on the window panes and the house was dim with sleep, Felipe whispered to his father, "Do you think I could be like them someday?" His father didn't answer immediately. He knelt down, wiped his oily hands on a rag, and looked at his son's hopeful face. "You already are," he said quietly. "You just haven't found your wheels yet." The first kart wasn't much to look at. It was built from spare parts, noisy and barely held together. But when Felipe sat in it for the first time, something happened. The world slowed down. The noise around him faded, and he felt, for the first time, like he belonged to something greater. Louise would take Felipe to the karting track every Sunday, not the fancy ones, just a dusty circuit near the edge of town. But to Felipe it was Monaco. It was Silverstone. It was magic. He wasn't the fastest at first. He spun out, he got dirt in his eyes. He cried once, when an older boy bumped him off the track, but he always got back in the kart. Always. Louise watched from the sidelines. Always quiet, always calm. Sometimes he'd bring a folding chair and a sandwich. Other times he just leaned on the fence, arms crossed, eyes locked on his son's tiny helmet. "You have to feel the tires," he'd say later in the car. "Not just drive them. Listen to them." Felipe did. Years passed like slow laps under a safety car. Felipe grew taller. His smile remained, but now it was lined with determination. Karting trophies began to appear on their small kitchen shelf, nestled between a broken toaster and a family photo. But it was never about the trophies. It was about something quieter, deeper, something that only Felipe and his father truly understood. A language of engines and heartbeats. At night, before bed, Felipe would lie awake, eyes tracing the ceiling like an imaginary circuit. He'd imagine himself in red overalls, a Ferrari logo on his chest, the Interlagos crowd roaring. He didn't dream of being famous. He dreamed of being fast, precise, respected. On his 13th birthday, Louis surprised him with a trip to the real track, not to drive just to see it, to walk along the fences, to smell the burnt rubber, to hear the distant buzz of test cars. They stood on the hill overlooking the Sena S, the most iconic corner in Brazilian motorsport. The sun was setting. Shadows grew long. Felipe stood still, barely breathing. His father put a hand on his shoulder. "This is where champions come to prove they're human." Felipe didn't understand it then, but he would. Back home, his room changed. Posters of Ayrton Senna, a map of Formula One circuits, dusty notebook filled with lap times, strategies, car drawings. Even his schoolwork became about racing. Math was better when it involved cornering angles. Science was fascinating if it who helped him understand tire grip. At dinner, his mother would shake her head and smile. "This house smells like gasoline and ambition," she joked. But Louise understood. He saw the fire, the same one he once had before life steered him in another direction. A quiet wish flickered in his heart, not that Felipe would become famous, but that he'd find peace in the pursuit. Felipe's first real test came at 15, in a regional karting championship. Faster kids, bigger teams, sleek machines, and polished sponsors. Felipe arrived in an old van with mismatched tires and a helmet that had seen better days. But when the lights went out, he flew. Not because the kart was fast. It wasn't not because he had a team. He DI'd in single quotes T. Because he knew the track by feel. He had memorized every bump, every twitch of the surface. He didn't fight the kart, he danced with it. He finished third. But to Louise, watching from the rail, Felipe had already won. That night, on the way home, they didn't talk much. Just the hum of the van, the glow of streetlights, and the soft sound of Felipe breathing against the window. Exhausted and content, Louise glanced at his son, then back at the road. He smiled to himself. "Your wheels," he whispered. "You found them." In the years to come, Felipe would rise. From karting to Formula Renault, from Formula Renault to F1 tests, and eventually Ferrari, but none of that mattered yet. Right now, in this moment, he was still a boy. Still chasing the echoes of engines in his mind. Still hearing the voice of his father and still dreaming, always dreaming. The sun over São Paulo was different in those days. Softer, slower. It rose gently, like a mechanic lifting the hood of an old car, carefully, respectfully, with a sense of purpose. Felipe was now 16, not quite a boy, not yet a man, tall enough to reach the pedals without straining, but still young enough to carry the dreams of a child in his heart. His mornings were no longer filled with cartoons and cereal. Instead, he woke early, before the buses, before the shops opened, before the birds began their songs. He'd slip quietly from his bed, careful not to wake his mother, and head out to the garage, where his father was always already waiting. There, beneath flickering fluorescent lights, surrounded by tools and the faint smell of burnt oil, the two would begin their quiet ritual, adjusting tire pressures, measuring axle alignment, wiping down the engine with loving care. Felipe rarely spoke in those mornings. He didn't need to. Everything he wanted to say was already in his hands, the way he worked, in the way he cared for the machine that carried his dreams. His racing schedule was changing. He had moved from local karting to the Brazilian Formula Chevrolet series, faster cars, bigger risks, real teams, real pressure, but Felipe didn't seem afraid. Not because he was fearless, but because fear had become familiar. He wore it like a second skin, stitched into his suit and helmet. He didn't ignore it, he embraced it. Louise couldn't travel as much now. The garage needed him. Bills needed to be paid. So Felipe traveled alone. Long bus rides through unfamiliar towns, sleepless nights in cheap motels, sandwiches eaten in silence, sitting on his racing bag, but he never complained. He wrote letters to his father on hotel note, short ones. The car feels light. I'm learning to manage oversteer better. Qualifying tomorrow. Love you. Luis kept everyone. One evening after a long qualifying day in Curitiba, Felipe stood alone at the edge of the empty paddock. The sun had already dipped below the trees, and the cool evening breeze carried with it the scent of damp asphalt and fresh paint. He looked up at the sky, vast, open, endless, just like the road ahead. A man from another team walked by, nodded, and said, "You drive like you've got someone waiting for you at the finish line." Felipe smiled. "I do." His results started to attract attention. Not from the newspapers, they were too busy with bigger names, but from the right people. Engineers, scouts, team principals, whispers of Europe, tests in Italy. Offers to join, junior programs. It sounded exciting. But Felipe wasn't interested in excitement. He was interested in movement forward, always forward. He called home one night, late, from a payphone near the hotel. Dad, he said, they want me to come. To Italy. Formula Renault. It's a small team, but it's real. I'd have to live there. There was a long silence on the line. Felipe imagined his father sitting in the garage, grease on his fingers, the TV humming quietly in the background. Do you want to go? Luis finally asked. Felipe hesitated, not because he wasn't sure, but because he didn't want to leave. I think I have to, he whispered. Another pause. Then his father said, gently, then go. But don't forget where the race started. Felipe did in single quotes. Italy was colder, louder, faster. The air smelled like espresso and burnt clutch plates. The tracks were legendary Imola, circuits he had only seen in books and grainy VHS tapes. He was a stranger in a land of gods. Language barriers, culture shocks, sleepless nights in dorms with paper-thin walls. But still he drove. He learned to listen to the car without translation. Torque spoke one language, so did grip, so did fear. His engineer, a soft-spoken man named Marco, noticed Felipe's focus. You don't drive like a boy, Marco said once. You drive like someone who knows how much these races cost. Felipe didn't answer. He just nodded. His first win in Europe came on a damp afternoon. In Valencia, the race was chaotic, spins, yellow flags, a crash on lap 6. But Felipe stayed calm. He didn't push when others panicked. He waited, like a fisherman who knew the tide would turn. When he crossed the finish line first, there were no fireworks, just the low hum of applause from the pit wall, and the sound of Marco saying, "Good job, kid." He didn't smile until much later, alone in his room, staring at the small trophy on the desk. He called home. "I won." Luis's voice cracked. "I knew you would." But the next race, he crashed. Brakes failed. The car spun violently into the barrier. He walked away unharmed, but something stayed behind, a piece of confidence, maybe a fragment of rhythm. He spent the night walking circles in the paddock, rain falling softly, shoes soaked, eyes distant. That night he remembered something his father once said. Winning is nice, but racing is the part you have to love, even when it hurts. Felipe repeated those words like a lullaby, over and over, until the fear quieted down. By the end of the year, his name was being mentioned. Not shouted, but whispered, respectfully. Felipe Massa in BrazilianFast.com under pressure. And then, a test invite from Ferrari. Just a test, nothing guaranteed. But still Ferrari, he told no one at first. Not even his father. He didn't want to speak the dream too loudly, for fear it might float away. When the day came, he arrived at Fiorano, Ferrari's private test track, with a quiet heart and tired eyes. Mechanics buzzed. Journalists watched. The car gleamed like a beast in hibernation. Felipe climbed in as the engine roared to life. He didn't think about contracts or fame. He thought about kart tracks in São Paulo, about his father's calm, and about every silent morning spent with a wrench and a prayer. The first lap was slow, careful, gentle. By the third, he was flying, not recklessly, not desperately, but like someone chasing something he couldn't quite name. A dream, a memory, a feeling, maybe all three. When he returned to the garage, helmet off, suit soaked with sweat, one of the engineers handed him a water bottle and said, "You've got the hands for this." Felipe smiled. Finally, later, as the sun dipped behind the track, he sat alone in the quiet of the paddock, a towel draped over his shoulders. He called home. "Dad," he said, "I drove a Ferrari today." Louise didn't say anything for a while. Then, softly, "How did it feel?" Felipe looked at the horizon like, "I'm getting closer." It began not with a contract, but with a conversation. Felipe was 20, leaner now, sharper. His face had lost the softness of boyhood, replaced by the quiet determination of someone who had seen the edge and stepped back from it. The call came. One afternoon while he was helping a neighbor fix a scooter, it was Peter Sorba. The man's voice was calm, deliberate. "We'd like to offer you a seat next season." Sorba, Formula One. Felipe said nothing at first. He could hear his own breath. He could hear the sound of tools clinking on concrete. "Are you there?" Peter asked. "I am," Felipe whispered, and just like that, the world changed. The move to Sorba wasn't a leap into the spotlight. It was a steady walk toward legitimacy, toward becoming part of the 22 men who would line up on the grid with the world watching. Preseason testing came first. The car was heavier than anything he had driven, not just physically but emotionally. These were real machines, built for war, built for precision. The team gave him a blue fireproof suit and a white helmet. No frills, no sponsors yet, just the basics. The engineers didn't know what to make of him. Some expected him to spin, others expected him to freeze. He did neither. Listened. He learned. He treated the car like an old friend, someone he didn't want to scare away. Melbourne, Australia, his first Grand Prix. The sky that morning was a soft shade of gray. Calm winds, the crowd murmuring like a tide. Felipe stood at the back of the pit lane, staring at his car, Sorba number 20. It looked impossibly sleek, unreal. He changed into his race suit in silence. Mechanics moved around him like clockwork, everyone busy, everyone focused. When he climbed into the cockpit, his hands trembled, not from fear but reverence. This was no longer simulation, no longer karting or regional series. This was Formula One. He pressed the ignition. The engine roared. For a moment, he closed his eyes. He was a boy again. On the cracked pavement in front of his house, listening to the faint echo of engines on the television. The lights went out. His start was clean. He didn't try to do anything heroic. He wasn't there to prove anything, just to finish, to learn, to be present. Lap after lap, the car whispered to him, tires degrading, brakes heating, the airflow telling stories through the chassis. He finished 12th, no points, no interviews. But his team patted him on the back. His engineer said, "You didn't flinch, that's enough." Felipe smiled. Life as an F1 driver was not glamorous. Not yet. Long flights, endless debriefs, simulator sessions that blurred into sleep. He moved through airports like a ghost, tired, always thinking about the next corner, the next breakpoint, but he loved it at night. In hotel rooms with the curtains half open and city lights flickering outside, he would lie still and think about his father, about the smell of the old garage, the sound of rain on the roof, the quiet way Louise would nod after a good lap time. He called him after every race, even the bad ones, especially the bad ones in Austria. He crashed during qualifying. The car snapped under braking and he went headfirst into the barriers. The team checked him, no injuries, just bruises and dust. But the look in his eyes, shaken, unfocused, lingered. That night in the motorhome, he didn't speak to anyone. He just sat, replaying the moment over and over. Later, his engineer found him. "Want to know something?" he asked. Felipe looked up. "You'll crash 100 more times in your life, and every time, you'll climb out. That's what makes you one of us." The season passed like a long night drive. Moments of clarity, moments of fog. How he began to earn respect not for podiums, but for consistency. For the way he listened, for the way he adapted. He didn't argue. He didn't shout over the radio. He drove at Monza, under silver clouds and a waving sea of red flags. He finished 6th. His first points he didn't celebrate with champagne. He didn't throw his gloves to the crowd. He sat on the pit wall, with his helmet beside him, and watched the fans. So many had come just to glimpse Ferrari, the red dream. He wondered what it would be like someday to wear those colors. That night, he flew home. No media, no handlers, just him and a red-eye flight back to São Paulo. His mother met him at the airport. She didn't say anything. She just hugged him tight. At home, in the quiet of his old room, he placed his race gloves next to the notebook from his childhood, the one filled with lap times and circuit sketches. Then he slept, not like a driver, not like a man, but like a boy who had found his place in the world. There's something sacred about the color red in Formula One. Not just any red Ferrari red. It isn't just paint, it's legacy, it's burden, it's hope. Philippe stood still the first time he saw the suit, bright crimson, embroidered with the yellow prancing horse, the Scuderia crest just above the heart. He didn't touch it at first, he just looked. The team manager smiled and said, "Try it on, you've earned it." Philippe hesitated. He took a slow breath, then lifted the suit and stepped into it. The fabric was heavier than he expected, as if it carried the weight of all those who came before. Ferrari had chosen him as a test driver, not yet a full seat, but a door had opened. He arrived in Maranello in winter. The town was quiet, draped in mist and engine noise. The factory gates were old, but alive. Every wall, every tool, every mechanic steeped in memory. And then there was Schumacher. Philippe had admired him from afar. Now they shared corridors, a garage, a simulator. Michael was not loud, not warm, exactly, but focused, kind in his own way. A nod in the hallway, a pat on the shoulder after a good session. "You're quick," Schumacher said once, "but patience will make you faster." Philippe never forgot that. He spent long hours in the simulator running laps, in silence, memorizing data, feeling the car, even when it wasn't real. Test days were cold. The wind would cut through the track like a knife. Engineers spoke in numbers, feedback, telemetry, tire wear. But Felipe's language was simpler. "Feel the car breathing," he told them once. "It talks if you listen." Some engineers rolled their eyes. Others wrote it down. Occasionally he was allowed to drive the real car. Not in races, just tests, private sessions. Early mornings at Fiorano or Mugello, those were the best days. Just him, the machine, and the quiet pulse of speed. He didn't think about the politics, the rumors, the headlines. He thought about the corners, the balance, the way the throttle responded when he dared to trust it. One day, during a break in testing, he wandered into the workshop where the old cars were kept. Dusty, silent, legendary. The 2000 championship-winning car sat in the corner, Schumacher's old seat. Felipe placed his hand on the nose cone and whispered, "Someday." When the team announced that he would replace Rubens Barrichello as the second race driver, everything changed. The world suddenly noticed him. Press flashbulbs, interviews in 3 languages. "How does it feel to join Ferrari? Will you support Schumacher? Are you ready for this pressure?" He answered each question carefully, respectfully, but inside, he was calm because the real questions weren't asked by journalists. They came at night, in quiet hotel rooms. Can I live up to this legacy? Will I be good enough? Will I disappoint the man who watched every lap of my life? The first time he lined up on the grid in a Ferrari, the sky was perfectly blue. Bahrain 2006. The garage smelled of new tires and fresh paint. Mechanics tightened bolts with focused silence. Michael stood beside him, arms crossed, not offering advice, just presence. When Philippe climbed into the car, he took a moment to look down at the logo on his chest, the prancing horse, the legacy then. The visor came down. Lights out. His start was clean, smooth. He didn't fight Michael, didn't try to make a statement. He knew his role: learn, grow, survive. He finished with points, no mistakes. The team patted his back, not with celebration but with respect. "You brought the car home," they said. That's where it begins. As the season unfolded, Philippe found rhythm. He crashed in Australia, got pole in Turkey. He was both storm and calm. Fans started noticing his style. Smooth inputs, gentle but firm cornering, brave on the brakes. He wasn't flamboyant. He was thoughtful, controlled. Like a man who'd been practicing for this his whole life, in garages, on notebooks, in dreams. At Monza, the Tifosi roared like a sea of lions. He stood on the grid, Ferrari red blending into the crowd. He thought of Senna, of his father, of cracked karting circuits under the São Paulo sun. The lights went out as Philippe drove, like music, like memory. Later that night, after the crowd had gone and the track fell silent, Philippe sat alone on the pit wall. The moonlight reflected off the barriers. The grandstands were empty, but still echoing with noise only he could hear. He pulled out his phone, dialed home. "Hi Dad, how was the race?" Louise asked softly. "I didn't win, but the car felt like it belonged to me." His father didn't say much, just breathed. "Then you're wearing the red sun. That means something." That winter, Schumacher announced his retirement. The team would need a new leader. Questions swirled. Who would carry the weight? Felipe said nothing. He trained, he studied, he prepared, because wearing red wasn't about noise, it was about silence, focus, and the promise made in childhood to be fast, yes, but also to be worthy. Some seasons are made of numbers, others are made of feelings. 2008 was both. It began with silence. Felipe stood alone in the Ferrari garage in Melbourne. The sun had not yet risen. Mechanics moved quietly around him, preparing the car. He stared at the empty track, the clean tarmac, the weightless air of early morning. Another year. Another chance. The whispers had begun. Could this be his year? He didn't answer. He only drove. The season opened with a storm. Melbourne was unforgiving. A DNF, a crash, a mistake that cost everything. The media was quick, not ready, inconsistent. Ferrari's weak link, but Felipe said nothing. He returned to Maranello, to the simulator, to the quiet. his father called. Bad days teach you more, Louis said gently, but only if you listen. Felipe listened. Then came Bahrain. Hot, dry, golden. He started fast, aggressive but balanced. The car felt alive. The tires gripped like a handshake with fate. Pole lead, win. The critics fell silent, but Felipe didn't cheer. He sat quietly in the garage, helmet resting on his lap, eyes closed. Because he knew this was just one corner in a long race. Turkey followed, Istanbul Park, one of his favorite circuits. He danced through the corners like a man who knew the steps by heart. Another win, and now the paddock spoke differently. Massa is a title contender. He's matured. The quiet storm still. Felipe said little. He let the results speak. At night, in his hotel room, he opened his notebook, the one he carried since his karting days. He wrote, "Each race is a chapter. Don't skip pages." But Formula One has a cruel memory. In Hungary, he led nearly the entire race. Perfect execution, perfect focus. Until, with just 3 laps to go, his engine gave out smoke, silence, nothingness. He pulled the car to the side and sat still, hands on the wheel, eyes forward. No shouting, no fists, just stillness. Later he walked back to the garage. No cameras, no tears. A mechanic whispered, "You deserved that one." Felipe nodded. "That's racing." He responded in Valencia. Another win, controlled, elegant, precise, but the standings were close. Hamilton, Raikkonen, Kubica, every point mattered. Every mistake echoed. At Spa, the rain came. The track turned to glass. Hamilton and Raikkonen fought brutally. Felipe waited behind. Watching. Kimi crashed. Hamilton cut the chicane. The stewards took hours. Eventually dash penalty. Felipe declared the winner, but it didn't feel like a victory. "I wasn't the best today," he admitted, "but the car was." Singapore, the night race. Lights like stars, heat like fire. He took pole lead early. Then DISASTERA pit stop mistake. The fuel hose still attached. The car dragged it down the pit lane like a lifeline being pulled away. By the time they fixed it, the race was over. He finished far behind. No yelling, no blame. Just silence, and the sound of mechanics avoiding eye contact. In Japan, the media swarmed. Is it over? Is the pressure too much? Will Ferrari replace him? Felipe gave one answer. He raced. In China, he came second. Strong, focused. Now, it was down to one final race. One race. Home. Brazil. At Interlagos, the sky held secrets. Gray clouds, cold wind, a drizzle that came and went like breath. He arrived early, touched the fence near the Senna S, closed his eyes. The crowd chanted his name. Massa, 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 Massa. This was not just a Grand Prix. This was his life, his country, his moment. He qualified on pole. On Sunday, it rained. Then it stopped. Then it rained again. The weather danced like a spirit, unpredictable and cruel. Felipe sat in the car on the grid, eyes closed, hands still. His father stood by the pit wall, arms folded, face calm. No words left to say, just belief. The lights went out. He led lap after lap, controlled, smooth, focused. The rain returned with just minutes left. The track turned slick, team scrambled, tire changes, panic strategy, but not Felipe. He stayed steady. He danced with the track like an old friend. He crossed the finish line first. The crowd erupted, fireworks, flags. He raised his fist, tears in his eyes. He was world champion for 38 seconds. Then came the whisper. Glock didn't pit, tires gone, turn 12. Hamilton passes. On the final corner of the final lap, Hamilton overtook Glock 5th place, enough to take the championship. Felipe pulled into park firm. The crowd still cheered, but his face shifted. Slowly, the truth settled in. He removed his helmet, stared at the sky, eyes blinking rapidly. He didn't cry, not yet. On the podium, he stood tall. The Brazilian anthem played. The crowd sang. Tears came, but they weren't just for loss. They were for effort. For the boy on the cracked street, or his father in the rain, for every corner he ever took. Later, in the garage, his family waited. His father opened his arms. Felipe fell into them. "I almost did it," he whispered. His father held him close. "You did," he said. "You won the race that matters. The one in here." He placed a hand on his son's chest. The next morning, São Paulo woke to rain and silence. Not because of sadness but reverence. Felipe Massa, the boy from the cracked streets and quiet karting tracks, had come home. He had not won the title, but he had won something greater, and everyone felt it. Outside his childhood home, dozens of neighbors gathered beneath umbrellas. Some carried flags, some wore red, others simply stood still, unsure of what to say, only knowing that they had witnessed something rare, a moment of pure human strength. A man who gave everything and walked away with his head high. Inside, Felipe sat at the old kitchen table, the same one where he used to sketch tracks in pencil. His helmet was beside him, still stained with raindrops from Interrelationship. His mother poured him coffee, no words, just warmth. His father stood in the doorway, quiet, watching. The TV was on, low volume, replays, interviews, commentators with urgent voices. But Felipe wasn't listening. He stared out the window, at the street where it all began. The rain fell, softly, just like it had yesterday. just like it had on his first test day, his first kart race, his first crash, his first win. It was the soundtrack of his life. Later, he stepped outside. The crowd clapped, but no one cheered too loudly. There was something sacred about the moment. A young boy handed him a drawing. It showed Felipe in his red Ferrari, crossing the finish line, arms raised at the bottom, written in shaky handwriting, "You are our champion." Felipe knelt down, took the boy's hand, and smiled. "I raced for you," he said softly. The boy nodded. The city held a small ceremony, not official, no politicians, just friends, neighbors, fans, people who had watched Felipe grow up. They filled a community hall near the old karting circuit, the same place where Felipe once lost a local championship by spinning out in the rain. He remembered that day, the sting of disappointment, the quiet drive home. And now, all these years later, he stood on a small wooden stage, microphone in hand. He looked out at the faces, wet with tears, lit with pride. "I didn't win the world title," he began, "but I felt something more powerful when I crossed that line. I felt you, all of you, your love, your belief, your voices." He paused. "And that's something no points can measure." The room stood in silence. Then someone clapped, then another and another, until the room was full of soft applause like rain on a roof. That evening he returned to the track, Interlagos alone. The gates were closed, but he had the key. The paddock was empty, the grandstands dark, the circuit sleeping. He walked slowly to the starting grid, the same place he had lined up the day before. He sat on the wet tarmac, cross-legged like a boy, and closed his eyes in his mind. He replayed it all: the lights, the roar, the corners, the quiet, the moment he thought he had done it, the moment it slipped away. The sound of the crowd, the voice of his engineer, his father's arms. He smiled, he cried, then he laughed, quietly in the distance. The first light of dawn began to peek over the hills. The clouds parted just enough to let through a single beam of sun, striking the asphalt where he sat. He stood up, wiped his face, took one last look at the empty track, and whispered, "Thank you." He returned home, slept a full night. No dreams, just rest. When he woke, there were hundreds of messages on his phone. Journalists, drivers, strangers from around the world. One read, "Champions are made of more than titles." Another simply said, "Thank you for feeling everything." A week later, Ferrari called. They wanted to extend his contract, but they didn't mention Interlagos. Not directly, they just said, "You showed us who you really are," and that was enough. That weekend, Felipe returned to the old karting circuit. He brought his helmet. His father brought tools. They worked together in the morning sun, fixing an old kart that had been left behind. Kids gathered to watch, curious. Wide-eyed. Felipe smiled and waved him closer. "Do you want to drive?" he asked. One by one they took turns. The kart sputtered and bounced, but it ran. And Felipe stood by the fence, just like his father once had. Arms folded, eyes steadied. At night, he wrote in his notebook, "Some races end without trophies, but they stay with you forever." That was one of them. It begins with rain. Not a storm, just a soft drizzle. The kind that leaves beads on helmets, that makes mechanics glance nervously at the clouds. Interlagos was quiet, not silent. Never silent, but holding its breath. In the garage, Felipe Massa sat alone, eyes closed, earpieces in, heart steady. His race engineer spoke softly through the headset. "Rain expected until lap 5, then it clears." Felipe didn't reply. He already knew. He could feel it in the air. The way the wind curved around the paddock, the rhythm of raindrops. On the roof. This was his home, his track, his day. Grid formation began. Cars pulled slowly into position. The red of Ferrari, the silver of McLaren, the blue of Renault, the orange of Force India. Each car humming. Waiting. Felipe pulled up to pole. Front row, prime view of destiny. He looked to his left, then to the grandstands. They were full of color. Yellow, green, red. Flags waving, arms raised, hearts open. Massa, Massa, Massa. The chant was low, like thunder in the distance. The lights above blinked red. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then silence. And green. Lap 1, Felipe launches clean. His rear tires gripped. The car leaps forward, slicing through the spray. Behind him, chaos wheelspin, jostling, but Felipe is gone. Down the Cena S. Perfect line. He doesn't look back. He knows the field is behind him, just the road ahead, just the hum of the engine. He breathes. Long, slow, focus. Lap 5, the drizzle stops. The clouds pull apart gently. A patch of blue sky appears like a promise. Time for slicks. He dives into the pits, precision like ballet. The crew swarms. Tires off, tires on. 7.2 seconds. Back out, still in front. Everything is calm. Lap 12. Hamilton sits in 4th. He only needs 5th to become champion. Felipe is still leading, still smooth, but the championship is a mirror with 2 reflections. Felipe doesn't chase points. He chases perfection. Corner after corner, gear after gear. No mistakes, no oversteer, no noise on the radio. The car breathes with him. Lap 20, Kimi holds 2nd. Alonso is 3rd. The order settles. The rhythm of the race becomes a lullaby. Even the crowd begins to quiet. Not with boredom, but with awe. They are watching something rare, something pure. A driver at home. in every way that matters. Lap 33, Hamilton falls to 6th. Gasps from the fans. Radio static in the paddock. Engineers flipping pages of strategy sheets. But Felipe doesn't flinch. He hasn't asked once where Hamilton is, because that isn't his race. His race is with the car, with the track, with the boy he once was. Lap for 1, clouds return. Soft gray ghosts drifting across the sky. The temperature drops. Teams prepare intermediate tires, but no rain yet, just the threat of it. Felipe tightens his grip, his knuckles pale inside. The gloves, he can feel it, the shift in the air, it's coming. Lap 63, 5 laps to go. Rain light, then heavier. Slicks won't survive. Pit lane becomes a blur of activity. Tires scattered like dice on a table. Mick Laren calls Hamilton in, so does Ferrari. Both drivers switch. Intermediates back on track. Felipe still leads. Hamilton drops to 6th again. The crowd rises. Massa is champion. For now, lap 68, 2 laps to go. Felipe's visor is streaked with water, but his focus is unbroken. He brakes a little earlier, steers a little smoother. Behind him, the sky darkens, but inside the cockpit, everything is light. Lap 70, final lap. The crowd is screaming. Ferrari on the pit wall is frozen. The TV graphics show it clearly. Felipe Massa P1, Lewis Hamilton P6. This lap is everything. Down the main straight. Into turn 1, clean turn. 3 still clean. Down the back straight he shifts gears, not with aggression, but grace. He knows every bump, every camber into Junco, the final corner. He opens the throttle. The car rises, cresting the hill. The grandstands are a blur of green and yellow. He crosses the line, arms raised, fists clenched. He has done it. He is world champion. For 38 seconds, but in those seconds on another part of the track, Timo Glock struggles. On dry tires, no grip, and then out of the mist comes a silver blur. Hamilton. He passes in the final corner. 5th place. Just enough. On the Ferrari pit wall, cheers turn to confusion, then to silence. Felipe slows the car, breathes hard. What happened? He asks. The voice in his ear is soft, gentle. We lost it. At the last corner. He parks the car, hand shaking. He removes his helmet, tears already forming. The crowd doesn't stop cheering. They cheer louder because they know he won the race. He won their hearts. He won everything that truly matters on the podium. The anthem plays. Felipe cries, not for himself, but for the journey, for every lap that brought him here. For the boy on the sidewalk, for the father by the fence, for every person who believed. He raises the trophy and smiles, because some races you win on the track, others you win in the soul. After the champagne dries, after the crowds disperse, after the lights go out, there is silence. Felipe Massa sat alone in the Ferrari motorhome, still in his race suit. The medal from Interlagos lay on the table before him, glinting faintly in the overhead light. Outside, the paddock had already begun to disassemble. Cranes, forklifts, team members rolling tires into trucks. The noise of Formula One was always temporary, but this silence, it lingered. He wasn't sad, not exactly. He wasn't angry, he wasn't even empty. He was full of feeling, of everything that had happened, of everything that hadn't. He placed his hands on the table, palms down, grounding himself. His breath came slowly, like waves returning to the shore. A soft knock on the door. It was Rob Smedley, his engineer. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. He just sat beside Felipe. The two stared at the medal, at the faint outline of raindrops still visible on the surface. "You were perfect today," Rob finally said. Felipe nodded. "But I didn't win." Rob shrugged. "Depends on what you mean by win." That night, back at home, he couldn't sleep, not because of the result, but because the world had changed, or maybe he had. He wandered into the garage, the same garage where he'd built his first kart with his father. The air still smelled faintly of gasoline and memory. He sat on the old stool, the one with the cracked leather. There were no trophies here, no noise, just tools, shadows, and the quiet hum of time passing. His father came in quietly, wearing slippers, holding 2 cups of tea. He handed one to Felipe, then sat down beside him. They didn't speak for a long time. Eventually, Felipe said, "I had it." "I know," Louise answered. "I saw the flag. I crossed the line. I thought I did it." His father nodded. "You did." Felipe looked over confused. "But I didn't win." Louise sipped his tea. "Son, you didn't win the championship, but you won the day, the moment, the hearts of millions. And you didn't lose it, you just shared it." Felipe breathed in slowly and exhaled something heavy. In the following weeks, life slowed down. No flights, no race weekends, no engineers in his ear, just São Paulo, just family. And quiet. He received thousands of letters from Brazil, from Europe, from children who drew him lifting the trophy, from elderly fans who said he reminded them of Senna. One letter stood out. It came from Japan. A child had written, "You lost, but you smiled. That's how I knew you were my hero." Felipe folded that letter and placed it in his notebook, the same one he carried since his karting days. He wrote underneath it, "Some lessons are louder in silence." He visited schools, hospitals, kart tracks. Everywhere he went, people greeted him not as a runner-up, but as a symbol, a figure of grace. They didn't ask about the championship, they asked how he stayed calm, how he found peace. He always smiled and said, "By remembering why I started racing." December came. Then January. Winter. Testing approached. Ferrari sent the schedule, flights, meetings, data reviews. The next season would begin soon, but Felipe felt different now. Not tired, just wiser, like someone who had seen the mountaintop and learned the view wasn't the only reward. One evening, he took his wife Rafaela to the beach. The sky was painted orange. The waves rolled in. Slow and soothing, they walked barefoot on the sand. She asked, "Do you wish it ended differently?" He paused, then answered softly, "No, because I know what it gave me. Not just attention, but clarity, purpose. That race showed me who I am and who I want to be." She smiled. "You're still going to race?" "Of course," he said, "but not to prove anything, just to drive." Back in Maranello, the Ferrari factory buzzed with preparation. New car, new regulations, new chances. But in the back room by his locker, Felipe kept something quiet. A photo of him on the podium at unforgettable. Crying, smiling, and beneath it, a handwritten note, "I was there." And it mattered. Time doesn't stop for anyone. Not even for those who finish first, but are remembered second. For Felipe Massa, the seasons after 2008 moved both quickly and gently like leaves in wind. He was still the same driver, still the same man, but the way he was seen had changed. In 2009, the world of Formula One shifted. New regulations, new tires, new noise. But Felipe remained in rhythm, still precise, still calm. He opened the season with a quiet fire, pushing, always chasing, but the car was difficult. Ferrari struggled, no wins, just long weekends, long meetings. He never complained. He simply asked, "What can I do better?" Then came Hungary, July 25th, a loose spring, a freak moment, and qualifying at over 260 kilometers per hour, a piece of debris struck him, straight to the helmet. The world held its breath. His car coasted into the barriers, unmoving, silent, then sirens, then surgery, then weeks of uncertainty. When he woke, in a hospital bed, the lights were soft, the world was blurry. His wife held his hand, his father stood nearby, holding his breath. "You're okay," they told him, and he was but something that had changed. The line between man and machine had never felt so thin. He missed the rest of the season, but he returned in 2010. Stronger, calmer, every driver faces the edge someday. Felipe had faced it and come back. That meant something. The years that followed weren't lined with trophies, but they were lined with something deeper. Consistency, respect, resilience. In 2012, at Monza, he received a standing ovation just for finishing fifth. Because everyone knew what it took to get back, what it meant to still be there, too. Race. To believe. He mentored young drivers, sat with engineers longer than required, shared telemetry, answered questions. He wasn't the loudest voice in the room, but when he spoke, people listened, because he'd lived what others feared and still smiled. Ferrari let him go in 2013. There was no bitterness, no headlines. Just a simple post. "Thank you for the memories," he responded. "Thank you for the dream." Then came Williams, a new chapter, a new shade of blue. Less pressure, more freedom. The team welcomed him like family, and Felipe responded with experience, speed, and warmth. In Austria, he took pole. At Monza, he stood on the podium again. But what mattered most wasn't the trophies. It was the way young mechanics smiled when he entered the garage, the way teammates hugged him after sessions. He had become something rare in motorsport. Loved on. In 2016, he announced his retirement, a final season, a farewell tour. Brazil prepared itself, banners, flags, songs. He would say goodbye at unforgettable, where it all began, where it almost ended in glory. The race was wet. As always, his car crashed midway through. Not the ending he wanted, but what happened next became legend. He stepped out of the car, helmet off. Rain falling, crowd chanting Massa, Massa, Massa. He walked slowly through the pit lane. Alone, soaking. Every single team came out to applaud. Mercedes, Red Bull, McLaren even. Teams he'd never driven for, because it wasn't about teams anymore. It was about Felipe, the man, the racer. Heart. His son waited at the end of the lane. Felipe picked him up. Held him close and whispered, "We did it." He came back briefly in 2017, one final season after Bottas moved to Mercedes. He didn't chase podiums, he chased sunsets. Closure, and when he retired for real, it was with peace. Today, Felipe Massa is still around, not always on TV, but in the paddock, in the garages, in the hearts of those who remember. His legacy isn't built on numbers, it's built on emotion, on resilience. On the calm courage to continue, even when glory slips away, even when the world doesn't notice. He didn't win the title, but he won the story. And sometimes that's more powerful, because stories last, and his keeps moving. In the world of Formula One, where speed and precision reign supreme, every millisecond counts. The roar of engines, the flashing lights, the cheering crowds, they all create an atmosphere charged with adrenaline and fierce competition. Yet beneath this thrilling spectacle lies a quieter, more profound story. A story of resilience, passion, humanity, and the timeless values that define not just a driver, but a man. This is the story of Felipe Massa, not merely the racer who chased a championship in 2008, but the person who found something far greater beyond the final corner. Asterisk, when we think of greatness in racing, it's often measured in wins, poles, and championships. Felipe Massa's career, marked by extraordinary talent and dedication, was often seen through this lens. His near miss in the 2008 World Championship, crossing the line first in Brazil, only to lose the title by a single point moments later, became a defining moment not just for him but for millions watching around the globe. But to reduce Massa's story to a mere tally of points would be to overlook the deeper currents running beneath. What does it mean to truly win? Is it the glory of the trophy, the cheers and the headlines? Or is it something more subtle, more enduring? Felipe's journey invites us to explore these questions, inviting a reflection on the essence of competition, the meaning of success, and the human spirit that drives us beyond the limits of the racetrack. Asterisk, in the high-octane world of Formula One, pressure is constant. Yet Felipe Massa exhibited a quiet strength, a composed spirit that allowed him to navigate not only the physical demands of racing but also its emotional challenges. Behind the helmet was a man who knew how to find peace amid chaos. After the heartbreak of 2008, when the championship slipped from his grasp by the narrowest of margins, many expected despair or bitterness. Instead, Felipe responded with grace. His words reflected a deeper wisdom that life's greatest victories are not always measured by the trophies we hold, but by how we rise after falling. He returned to racing with renewed purpose, embracing each lap with humility and passion. His calm presence inspired teammates, fans, and rivals alike. It was a reminder that true champions are forged not just in moments of triumph, but in how they handle defeat. Asterisk, what then are the values Felipe Massa carried through his life and career? Beyond speed and skill, it was the steadfast commitment to respect, perseverance, and integrity. These qualities transcended the racetrack, influencing those around him and shaping his legacy. Respect for competitors, for fans, and for the sport itself. Massa never sought shortcuts. His approach was honest and dignified. Even in the most intense battles, he maintained a sense of fairness and sportsmanship, perseverance, the willingness to push forward despite setbacks. Felipe's career was marked by challenges, crashes, injuries, and near misses, yet he never gave up. His resilience became a beacon for those who understand that failure is not the end, but a step on the path to growth. Integrity, holding true to one's values, no matter the circumstances. Felipe's humility and authenticity endeared him. To many, he remained grounded, connected to his roots and family, never losing sight of who he was beyond the fame and speed. Asterisk. Felipe Massa's influence extended beyond the circuits and paddocks. He used his platform to support charitable causes, to mentor young drivers, and to inspire future generations. His story became a source of hope and encouragement, a testament to the power of dreams and the strength of character. His life off the track was equally remarkable. A devoted family man, Felipe cherished the moments away from the spotlight. These quiet times reflected the balance he sought, a reminder that racing, as thrilling as it was only one part of a fuller life. In interviews and appearances, Felipe often spoke about the importance of gratitude, mindfulness, and living with purpose. These reflections resonate deeply, especially in a world that moves as fast as Formula One itself. Asterisk, in racing, the final corner is often decisive, a place where championships are won or lost. Yet, when viewed through a philosophical lens, it becomes a metaphor for life itself. It is the moment of choice, the turning point where courage meets clarity. Felipe Massa's final corner, in many ways, was not on the track but within. It was the realization that true victory is not a moment in time, but a lifetime of moments of effort, growth, and connection. What does it mean to be a champion? Is it the trophy that adorns a shelf, or the respect earned through honest struggle? Is it the fleeting glory or the lasting impact on others? Felipe's story suggests that championship is not just about crossing the finish line first, but about running the race with heart, with dignity, and with love for the sport and its people. Asterisk, in the stillness after the race, when the crowds have gone home and the circuits grow silent, there is space for reflection. Felipe Massa's journey teaches us that the greatest races are not against others, but within ourselves. That the most enduring victories come from integrity, kindness, and resilience. As we remember Felipe's final corner, let us carry forward these lessons. Let us honor the spirit of the racer who understood that speed is thrilling, but love, respect, and courage are timeless. In the end, Felipe Massa's story is not just about Formula One. It is about life, its challenges, its heartbreaks, and its infinite possibilities. It is about finding calm in the storm, strength in adversity, and meaning beyond the finish line. Asterisk.